It's been a while since I made a video talking about the best Rocket League players in the world. Many of my old videos on this topic are way outdated at this point, and I figured this would be kind of a fun way to look back through Rocket League's history at the best players of all time, and be able to include those players that didn't make the list last time because, those videos are just old. This is also a really fun way to highlight the way that Rocket League has changed throughout the years. One player who may have dominated under a certain meta, just 2 seasons later couldn't hang with the best in the world. Keep in mind that this stuff isn't absolute. Any player at any given time could probably lose to another pro or high-level player, and there's always arguments, for who's the best in any different era. Plus, I'm going to do a different player for each season, even though this thumbnail could have probably looked something like this. Or you could easily say that Kronovi and Cooksier were the best for multiple seasons in those early days. The way I look at this, it's almost like these are the standout players for me. So we'll just sort of put it that way. But yeah, each season will have a unique player. All right, guys, let's jump right back all the way into 2015, Rocket League Season 1. Get ready for some high-flying aerial action and horrible camera settings. There's really no debate for the first ever season of Rocket League. The best player in the world at that time was Kronovi. If you weren't around at this time, Kronovi was almost like Ninja was for Fortnite in its early seasons. He'd come out of years of experience playing the prequel to Rocket League, being like a top 3 player at that time in the prequel, and he grinded the game at the start like nobody else. I think from the very beginning of Rocket League, he saw what it was going to become, and he knew what he could be in this game because of his experience. There's a great show match on YouTube from August of 2015, just like a month or so after the game came out. And the show match is between Kronovi and Mike Rules, another SARP veteran and one of the best players in the world. And yeah, Kronovi just absolutely dominates him because he truly was on another level. I think the 2 main areas where Kronovi excelled over virtually everyone else in Season 1 was his speed of play. Just really reaction time, quick decision making, and then, probably over everything, his control, like his car control in the air. Very few players could even fly at all at this time, and Kronovi was like flying off the backboard backwards to hit shots out in the midfield. He put aerial shots on net from anywhere on the field. It's like he was a year or so ahead of everyone else. But as with Ninja and Fortnite, if you're the best and you're the biggest in the world, you're going to inspire everyone else to improve, and that's exactly what happened with Kronovi as Rocket League entered its 2nd season. So for Season 2, we've got Pashy90 as the standout player and arguably the best player at this time. He was ranked number 1 in multiple playlists, and this was a time when all of the best in the world were grinding ranked because it was new. They weren't just like playing 6-mans or, not even playing. Rocket League was evolving incredibly fast at this time, and I really do think Pashy played a major role in the shaping of Rocket League. This was about when I started playing Rocket League, and Pashy was my favorite person to watch. He was doing things at this time that were completely new and just mind-blowing to me. He was one of the first players alongside Cooksier and others who could consistently hit double touches and backboard shots. Like, he made them look easy, which seemed impossible for me as a brand new player who could hardly, maneuver around the field. I distinctly remember this shot where Pashy pre-jumped for a pass from the corner and just floated in the air. This was so insane to me. He was also one of the first players to air dribble from the ground consistently and, air dribble all the way from the corners, like over by the goal, all the way out into the field and into the goal. Oh, and his dribbling. Pashy's dribbles were unbelievable. He was the best ones player in the world because he was hands down the best dribbler in the world. For me, Pashy's the one who stands out at this time. There's a lot of other players who, were really changing the meta and improving the game a lot, but for me, it's Pashy. All right, for Season 3, we're going to look at 2 players because this season lasted for a very long time, from June 2016 all the way to April of 2017. Our first player is a person named Lichinio. Now, if you know anything about RLCS history, you know that Lichinio won the first ever RLCS World Championship alongside Kronovi and Overzero. But for me, picking Lichinio is way more than the fact that Lichinio won the first ever RLCS. Much like Kronovi and Pashy, Lichinio simply played Rocket League on another level and in a different way than anybody around him. He was one of the first players to really be able to consistently hit powerful redirects on target and he also took backboard shots to another level in terms of speed and consistency. Prior to Lichinio, and as we saw with Pashy, double touches were slow and methodical. There's nobody hitting insanely hard double touches like this. His playstyle was unique as well. I guess you could say he was the first great ball chaser. Not to say that he didn't have amazing defense. His defense saved IBP multiple times in RLCS, but what stood out about Lichinio was his aggressive offensive playstyle. It was sort of fearless, and it was really fun to watch. I really do think Lichinio was also one of the first players to implement freestyling elements into competitive play. Like when he played, it just looked fun, and it looked like he was free and kind of doing whatever he wants. The next player that has to be mentioned for this time period, and really the seasons before it as well, is Cooksier97. Season 3 of Rocket League went all the way into Season 2 of RLCS, the season that Flipside Tactics made their historic run through the lower bracket to win the World Championship. At this time, and really all of the seasons leading up to it, Cooksier97 was one of the most innovative players in the world. And one example was, and still is, his unique camera settings. Cooksier didn't like some of the changes from SARP to Rocket League in terms of camera movement, and especially having to do with ball cam. In Rocket League, it's more fixed on the ball, whereas in the prequel, there was more movement, which to those of us who've only played Rocket League, it just kind of makes the prequel look incredibly janky and weird, but to Cooksier it was what he knew, and I don't think it was ever meant to be janky, it was just different. So Cooksier's very odd camera settings were, on some level, a way to fix that problem. And in those early days, Cooksier just had a completely unique playstyle. He really showed the community that there wasn't just one way to play this game. In his case, he made Rocket League look like a game of chess often. Even with some of the best mechanics in the world, he was obviously incredible. He could hit insane double touches, all the stuff that people were doing at that time. But for him, the focus seemed to be strategy and precision. I think this is why Cooksier has been able to stay relevant even now 4 years later. It's not about one specific playstyle or group of mechanics, it's about the bigger meta, and in his case, it's whatever it takes to win. But yeah, I definitely think Cooksier is the standout player from this time period, and taking his team all the way to a RLCS World Championship definitely makes it, pretty convincing that he should be there. Alright guys, Season 4 goes to the first person on our list to not be a SARP vet. Lichinio, Kronovi, Cooksier, and Pashy, they were all people who played the prequel to Rocket League. And this person is Devo. Now, Devo first showed up in Season 2 with Pashy and Violent Panda. Devo took the high-flying aggression of players like Lichinio and Pashy, and he just took it to another level. As we saw, double touches off the backboard were happening pretty rarely, but not in the way that Devo was hitting them. Devo started hitting double touches the way that people hit double touches now. Prior to this, there were rarely players actually purposely setting up double touches. The ball would often just, go high off the backboard from a shot, and they would adjust and kind of make it work. And usually it didn't work. But Devo was doing something different. He was just throwing rockets off the backboard intentionally and nailing them into the goal with insane power. Devo basically changed the meta at that time, so that now, and since Seasons 2 and 3 of RLCS, 1 or even 2 players will often be on the backboard ready to clear it if someone goes for a shot like this. For Devo, Rocket League seemed to be all about speed, beating your opponent to the ball, hitting the ball harder and faster, and even in his rotations and just movement around the pitch, Devo was one of those players who just seemed faster. Even in the way he dribbles the ball, he was really one of the first players to, instead of taking his time dribbling, he would just get the ball moving super fast and flick it over your head. Of course, Devo went on to win RLCS in Season 3, which marked roughly the end of Season 4 for Rocket League. That leads us right into Season 5, where I have to give it to Turbopolsa. Honestly, I could give multiple seasons to Turbo, the first ever Rocket League player to win 2 and then 3 World Championships, still arguably one of the most valuable players in the world. Turbo stands out to me as one of the true Rocket League competitors. This really showed itself when he played with Violent Panda and K-Dop. These were 3 players who just knew how to outplay their opponents, whether it was insane pressure or infield passing, or just their ability to hold a lead. Turbo has also been one of the few Rocket League pros who's willing to trash talk, which is kind of nice because a lot of the players just don't get into this.
We've been practicing really hard, we've been doing well in scrims, and G2 is nothing without JNAPs, and he wasn't doing really well.
For the longest time, I really didn't believe it was possible to be completely dominant in this game. I always felt like you were just gonna get, bumped off the top right away if you got there. But Turbo and his team showed that it's possible to really dominate and continue to beat teams and to really have sort of a dynasty. And I really think that's the legacy that they left on Rocket League and that Turbo left on Rocket League. Speaking of Turbo, let's talk about the standout player from Season 6, which is JNAPS. Again, much like these other players, JNAPS had already had his dominant moments, arguably the star player for G2 for multiple seasons of RLCS. But this was the season G2 won E-League, and in my opinion, JNAPS was finally performing under pressure as the player that he really was, arguably the best player in the world. It's hard to really pinpoint why JNAPS was and still is so good. I think he was really the first in a new era of players who truly are fantastic at everything. From this point on, that's what it takes to basically beat the best teams in the world. You need to have 3 players who are all fantastic at everything. JNAPS has always been one of the best mechanically, but not to the point that it gets in the way as, some other players do. He can see the opportunity for a ceiling shot or a flip reset and still consciously choose an infield pass over a solo play if he needs to. He's not flashy, I guess I would put it that way. I mean, he's scored lots of ridiculous goals, so he is flashy when he needs to be, but he's just one of those players that just carries, no matter who he's playing with. He's a lot like KDOP in that sense. Which brings us into Season 7, and Season 7 coincides with Season 4 of RLCS, and we all know that Season 4 was the era of Gale Force. I have to give this season to KDOP, because during this time he either won or got second in virtually every major Rocket League event. So what is it about KDOP's playstyle that shaped Rocket League during this time? We saw earlier that different playstyles can work for Rocket League, and we saw players like Devo and even early Kronovi who played fast and aggressive and even flashy. Lichinio is also a good example of that. But KDOP is different. KDOP embodies the opposite approach. His playstyle is not flashy. It's, in a lot of ways not mechanically on the same level as players like Squishy or Justin. But actually, one could argue that some of KDOP's mechanics are actually better than players like Squishy or Justin. Take, for example, things like shot accuracy or even passing accuracy. There are a few players who can put the ball into the top corner on a power shot the way that KDOP can. I would argue that he is the best in the world just at shot placing. So does that have to do with mechanics? I would say that it does. KDOP has taken precision to another level. His passes are on point virtually every time, and really just his touches are exactly what he wants them to be. And he just plays patient. He waits and he waits until it's time to attack, and when he does, he always executes. KDOP sort of brought back boring Rocket League. At a time when everyone was trying to do the next nuttiest thing, KDOP was just out there winning world championships and winning lots of money. Season 9 took place around May 2018 through September of 2018, and for me, the standout player from this time was definitely Justin. The Rocket League meta has had its fair share of shifts from players like Cooksier and KDOP, who were more game sense minded, to players like Squishy and Lichinio, who seemed to dominate often just through their sheer mechanical ability. And then Justin showed up in Season 5 of RLCS with arguably the best mechanical abilities of any player that we'd ever seen so far. Justin took this idea of beating players with mechanical ability to another level, but it didn't take away from his overall game sense or focus. It wasn't like his car was just out there flailing around the field. He controlled his mechanics. He used them to confuse opponents or recover quickly. And it was flashy. I can't take that away from him. And of course, he hit the most famous Rocket League shot of all time during this time period at the RLCS World Finals for Season 5. No need to watch that one again, since I'm sure most of you have already seen it 83 times by now. But yeah, I don't think this list would make much sense without Justin on it. Definitely one of the most impressive Rocket League players of all time. Season 9 was a good season. Besides getting Grand Champ for the first time, personally, Cloud9 won RLCS during this season, and though Squishy could have certainly been put at number 1 many seasons back, I figured I'd put him here since this was, his best time competitively. What exactly has Squishy brought to the game of Rocket League? Besides, discovering and perfecting multiple mechanics, pulling off some of the craziest Rocket League shots we've ever seen, I think Squishy has left his mark as a true innovator of the game. I think his legacy is really his approach. He doesn't ever settle for just doing the same things that he's been doing. He's always analyzing his own gameplay and trying to figure out new ways to outsmart or outplay his opponents. I think what stood out to me most, besides all the crazy goals and plays, has been his ability to prove himself as a competitor. And even now, as Cloud9 has been struggling in Season 8 of RLCS, I think he knows that being great at something has its ups and downs. And it's really not about the ups, it's about how you handle the tough losses, those moments when you absolutely have to fight back. For me, that's what's made Squishy squishy. All right guys, Season 10 was really tough, but I have to give it to ScrubKilla. It was basically a toss-up between Scrub and Fairy Peak because I really did want Fairy Peak on this list really bad. And you know, he definitely deserves to be considered one of the best Rocket League players of all time. But for now, Scrub stands out as, you know, the Season 10 player. Dominant across multiple playlists, still one of the best ones players in the world, RLCS World Championship. Oh, and he's got a YouTube channel now, which I went and watched for a bit, and it's nauseating how good Scrub is. Like, you don't always get that sense when you watch RLCS. Just watching him play ones from his perspective, oh man. Even though he's still so young, he truly is a veteran of this game. Scrub is known to some as kind of the ultimate ball chaser, and in some ways I think that's accurate. Scrub has such a good understanding of what his opponent is thinking about doing that he can actually stay closer to the ball than most people can. For me, Scrub's ability to make shots, defend the net, and really just do what he needs to do under extreme pressure is what stands out. Scrub's another player who could have been mentioned much earlier on this list, but I wanted to put him here because this was the season he really proved that he was the absolute best, winning RLCS in spectacular fashion, beating the best G2 we'd ever seen. Scrub's imprint on the game for me is really his ability to read what people are doing and just take advantage of every little mistake that they make. Alright guys, Season 11 goes to Shawset45, a player who's been around the scene for a very long time, has had a stellar career, but you know, hasn't really shown fully what he's capable of until recently. Shawset had one of the best tournaments any single player has ever had at DreamHack Valencia this past July, at a time when solo plays are almost becoming impossible in competitive Rocket League. Shawset just took things into his own hands in this tournament, scoring goals upon goals against helpless defenders. I don't know, I'm not sure I could pinpoint exactly how Shawset is so good, but yeah, he's so good. Alright guys, Season 12, the current season, I'm going to go way out on a limb. I'm going to say that I believe the standout player from this current era is FirstKiller. That's right, a player who isn't even competing in RLCS. And there's two reasons for this. First, he is focusing almost entirely on ones. That's his focus at this point, and he's virtually unstoppable. He's won like 16 or 17 or maybe even more show matches in a row on Johnny Boy's stream, including his grudge match against ScrubKilla immediately after Scrub had just won the biggest prize pool ever on Johnny Boy's stream. FirstKiller comes in, gets his revenge, and beats him, I believe, 4-1. He is in another league in terms of ones, but I find him to be the single most impressive Rocket League player in a very, very long time. His speed, his reaction time on defense is second to none, and his ability to just take over and dominate an opponent is really reminiscent of ScrubKilla. I did make an entire video on Scrub and FirstKiller's little rivalry. If you guys want to check it out, it's pretty fun. But yeah, I know there's lots of RLCS players who are killing it right now. It's just for me, this kid stands out as the next great Rocket League player, and I think we'll all look back at this point and remember this sort of dominance that he's had. Alright guys, thanks for watching. I hope you guys liked this little trip down Rocket League memory lane. Make sure to let us know below what your list would look like, or you know, maybe some of the players that you think should have made the list. Alright guys, until next time, peace out.